Okay, we are live, I believe, so welcome everybody to our January 3rd, 2023 organizational meeting. NASCO, we're live and the people online can hear us, is that right? Nicole, can you hear us okay? You can, okay, wonderful, thank you, appreciate it. For everybody online and everybody here and in the audience and the board members, item number 1 on our agenda deals with our strategies, list the 5 out. Item number two is the meeting link where it can be viewed. This meeting can be viewed. Item number 3 is a call to order. So, Ms. Steves, will you please determine if we have a quorum present?
Yes, Mr. Wolf, we do.
Okay, thank you. And with that, I'd ask you to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Bellingham, thank you for leading us in the pledge.
You're welcome.
Okay, this brings us to item number 4, approval of the agenda. I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda as shown.
So moved. Second.
We have a motion by Ms. Boudreau, a second by Ms. Steves. Any further discussion?
Should we switch number 4 and 5 around?
No, I don't believe. Oh, I'm sorry.
Because the two Lindas can't vote right, at this point.
Well, that's a good question, Mr. Olson. That's the way it's always been. You know what? We'll flip flop them, and that way we can make sure, because that's a good point. So we are going to flip the approval of the agenda is going to move to item 5, and the recognition and oath of the newly elected officers will move to item number 4. Is that correct? Okay. So that becomes 5, and that becomes 4. So, sorry. With that said, I will read the oath for Ms. Boudreau, Ms. Moore, and Mr. Bellingham up front, and then when we're done with that, Mr. Bellingham will read the oath for myself.
Sorry, thank you.
In case there were pictures.
You might want to grab your mic too.
Yeah. Do you want to grab your mics? And then just grab your mics if you would, maybe it'll pick up a little better online.
Just pick them up there.
Well, if we could just do one and I'll hold it in the middle, that might be fine.
You want to do that?
Whatever.
It's good.
You can use that. You 3 stand over there? I don't know if it matters or not. Yep, so I'm going to read and then you'll repeat after me, okay? And if you want to, we'll make this as official as can be. We'll just put our right hand up if that's all right. Sorry for the cord. So this is a recognition and oath for the newly elected members of the school board. I do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States.
I do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
The Constitution of the State of Minnesota, and faithfully discharge the duties of my office.
the Constitution of the State of Minnesota, and faithfully discharge the duties of my office,
According to law and to the best of my ability and understanding.
according to the law and to the best of my ability and understanding.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
You want to do that one? No.
I'm going to change it now.
Okay.
I do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
I do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the State of Minnesota, and faithfully discharge the duties of my office,
the Constitution of the State of Minnesota, and faithfully discharge the duties of my office,
according to law and to the best of my ability and understanding.
according to law and to the best of my ability and understanding.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Okay, thank you for that, everyone. And welcome Ms. Boudreau and Ms. Moore to the Faribault Public School Board. We appreciate it and look forward to it. Okay, so that brings us now to item number 5, which is the approval of the agenda. And I will entertain a new motion to approve the agenda.
I so move. Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Ms. Boudreau and a second by Ms. Steves. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Thank you. This now brings us to item 6, election of officers for 2023. We will start with the nomination for the chair, and we will, once the chair is elected, that individual will then continue through the rest of the meeting. If there's movement, everybody will move at that time to the new positions. Each position should have a nominee, the board, the floor open for nominees 3 times, it should be called. Okay, so for the chair, I will call for nominee 3 different times. Makes sense? And so whoever then takes over as chair, whatever it looks like, that chairperson will then call for nominee for the vice chair 3 times and so on. Okay? Mr. Rocha.
I would like to entertain and introduce the nomination for Chad Wolf as chair.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Robichaud. Are there other nominees?
I would like to nominate Richard Olson for chair, and if I may, I would like to provide some background reasons.
Sure, that's fine.
Mr. Olson is currently in his 14th year on the school board, and his 14th year representing at the Minnesota School Boards Association, representing the district. In previous years, he has served as clerk and treasurer on the board. He tells me he has never missed a board work session or a board business meeting. He was recognized by the MSBA with the President Award and has over 300 hours of MSBA training programs.
Thank you. Okay, so there are 2 nominees. I will ask one more time. Are there any other nominees for the chair position? Okay, hearing none, I believe we now go to a vote, and we'll just go in order of the nominees that were mentioned. This is kind of weird, to be brutally honest with you, but I will ask for a vote, I guess, for myself, Chad Wolf. I'm sorry? I don't believe there's any second. There's simply votes that take place.
Yeah, so you're calling for a vote?
I'm calling for a vote,
Okay.
yep. So whether you want to,
Together or individually or what?
we can go together, we can show of hands, whatever is on record, okay? Now, the other thing that I learned from this of the MSBA workshop, hour-long meeting, if you abstain, the abstain will go towards the majority, okay? So let's just say there's 6 people, right? And there's 6 people that will, I guess there'll be 7 voting because you can vote for yourself. But let's just say it went 4-2 and there was an abstention. The abstention will then go towards the majority vote, so the final tally that would be published would be 5-2. I learned that, okay? So just so everybody's on the same page. So yes, we will do a show of hands, if you will, or aye, whatever everybody's comfortable with. And then everybody can see that. And maybe, Ms. Steve, since you're still acting as clerk, we'll actually do a roll call so we can get everybody on record. Is that fair enough?
Yes.
Fair enough? Okay, so, Mr. Robichaud, you nominated me as board chair, and so with that, I will open up the vote for me as board chair. You want to do a roll call?
Yeah. John Bellingham?
I know we're voting for Mr. Wolf, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. Aye.
Linda Boudreau?
It's either a nay or aye.
Correct.
Yep.
Nay.
Linda Moore?
Nay.
Richard Olson?
No.
Jerry Robichaud?
Aye.
Cassie Steves, aye. Chad Wolf?
Aye.
Passes 4-3.
Okay. And since that passed, I would still recommend we do a roll call for Mr. Olson as well, just in fairness and clarity. So with that, I will let you do a roll call vote as well for Mr. Olson, and where Ms. Boudreau made the nomination.
John Bellingham?
Nay.
Linda Boudreau?
Aye.
Linda Moore?
Aye.
Richard Olson?
Aye.
Jerry Robichaud?
No.
Cassie Steves, no. Chad Wolf?
No, nay.
Fails.
Okay, thank you. I look forward to working with everybody and look forward to the year, so thank you. That brings us to item 6B, the vice chair. So I will take any nominations for vice chair.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to nominate Mr. John Billingham as vice chair.
Okay, thank you. So we have one nominee for vice chair. Are there any other nominees for vice chair? Okay, I will ask one more time. This will be the third and final time. Are there any other nominees for vice chair? Okay, hearing none, I don't believe we actually need a vote because there was only one nominee. So with that, Mr. Bellingham, congratulations, you are vice chair.
Thank you.
This brings us to item 6C. And I will, for clerk, I will take any nominations for the position of clerk.
Mr. Chair, I nominate Cassie Steves for position of clerk.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Bellingham has nominated Ms. Steves for clerk. Are there any other nominees for clerk? Okay, I'm going to ask one more time, third and final time. Are there any other nominees for the position of clerk? Hearing none, Ms. Steves, congratulations. You are clerk for 2023. Thank you. Okay, now this brings us to item 6D, treasurer, position of treasurer. I will open the floor for any nominations for the position of treasurer.
I guess I'll nominate myself for treasurer.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Olson. Do we have any other nominees for the position of treasurer?
Mr. Chair, I would like to nominate Mr. Jerry Robichaud for the position of treasurer.
Okay, thank you. Third and final, ask for nominees for the position of treasurer. Are there any other nominees for the position of treasurer? Okay, hearing none, Ms. Steves, will follow the same protocol that we did for the chair position. We will move to a roll call vote, if you will, please. And we'll start with Mr. Olson.
John Bellingham?
Nay.
Linda Boudreau?
Aye.
Linda Moore?
Aye.
Richard Olson?
Aye.
Jerry Robichaud?
Nay.
Cassie Steves, nay. Chad Wolf?
Nay.
Fails 4-3.
Okay, we will now move on to a roll call vote for Mr. Robichaud.
John Bellingham?
Aye.
Linda Boudreau? Linda Moore?
Nay.
Richard Olson?
Nay.
Jerry Robichaud?
Aye.
Cassie Steves, aye. Chad Wolf?
Aye, yes.
Passes 4-3.
Okay, thank you. Okay, congratulations, Mr. Robichaud, on the position of treasurer. So with that, Ms. Steves, for the rest of the evening, you will continue to do all roll call votes for resolutions, okay? And then at the end of the evening, you will have to sign anything that the clerk needs to. Thank you. All right, that brings us to item number 7, which is policy 209, Code of Ethics. This is simply a review, and this is something that the MSBA video strongly recommended attaching to our agenda, putting on the agenda. So I would just open this up briefly, if you would, to Mr. Bellingham, Ms. Steves, Mr. Olson. All three of you, I believe, are current members of the policy committee as it sits today. And is there anything you would like to highlight in there? I know we reviewed this in December, I believe. We actually approved it, I think. Any updates to it in December? But the three of you, are there anything you would like to point out or add to this, as it's simply review? And once again, recommended by the MSBA presentation that they just gave.
Mr. Chair, I do believe it is, on behalf of the policy committee, it was recommended that this would be presented at the organizational meeting for all board members to read and review as in order to have efficient and professional meetings. So,
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bellingham. Ms. Steves, anything you'd like to add?
I would agree. All of our policies are listed on our website, so if you're ever bored and want to take a look at them, that's a good place to look. But this one is very, standard, but it's also a good review for those of us that aren't newly elected, just to take a look inward.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Olson, is there anything
No.
you'd like to add about this?
No,
No?
that's fine.
Okay, thank you. So if you would, just make sure everybody reviews it and knows it and go from there. So thank you. Okay, that brings us to item number 8, school board schedule of meetings. If everybody has their computer, it's in front of them. Otherwise, it can be printed. NASCO, I don't know if you can share that on the screen or not. Typically, no, we can't? Okay. Okay, no worries. It's in board book. Ms. Averill, typically it's the first and third Mondays, typically, not always.
Typically, sometimes we have to work around that because it's through the holidays.
Right, okay. So typically that work session would be the first Monday of the month. The business board meeting would typically be that third Monday of the month. Ms. Averill will send out all of these in email invites, so they pop up on your calendar amongst as you accept them. Is there any on there that somebody sees they know they have an issue with at this time? And once again, if somebody misses for a reason, they miss. We don't need 7 in attendance at every board meeting, but clearly if we know that we're going to have several gone, we may want to look at an adjustment here or there. But
Chair.
yes, Mr. Rupshaw.
Oh, no, go ahead.
Can I ask that if there is somebody who has to miss a meeting, that they notify either you or Jamie so that you two know whether or not we're going to have a quorum?
Yep. No, good idea, and I think in the past everybody's done that and communicated it. So, yep. Thank you, Ms. Steves. Were you going to say something?
Yeah, December I will not be available.
December 4th. Okay. And December 4th, the meeting she references, that's also our truth in taxation, and I believe that's a statute. We need to have it at that time. So, just like this year. So, okay. We will actually look for a motion to approve this. Once again, we can adjust things if absolutely needed in the future, but this is a good way to make sure it's on our calendars and we're well aware of it well in advance. So I'll entertain a motion to approve the school board schedule of meetings as presented.
Second.
We have a motion by Ms. Boudreau, a second by Ms. Steves. Any further discussion on this item? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Thank you. This brings us to item 9, committee assignments. So this is, we'll go through this. Ms. Averill has all the information. It's also out here in board book. I have it up in front of me. This is where we can have up to 3 board members on a committee. Some, quite frankly, there isn't a lot of reason to have 3 board members on a committee. We'll get to those. I know I've sent out the schedule of when the different committees meet. Sometimes there's a time constraint or a day of the week issue or whatever. And just because you were on it last year doesn't mean that you will be on it this year. If there's a tie break and there's 4 people that want to be on a committee, I get to flip the coin and determine who goes on the committee as the third person and who doesn't go on the committee. So just something that the board chair gets to do, I guess. So with that, I will start with the finance committee.
Do we have-
I'm sorry, go ahead.
to interrupt. Is there, like, the meeting times or set schedules, is that on one document or is that in that?
That's not on any of these. Ms. Zavril had shared that, and she may have it and I may have a different document. I did share it with both of Ms. Boudreau and Ms. Moore to have them think about what they wanted to be on and make sure that if they wanted to be on that, did they have any time constraints or anything like that. But finance, we can go through these, and if you're on the committee, please chime in and say when you typically meet. Finance committee is typically the third Monday of the month, usually at 7:30 in the morning, and for the last 2 years or so, it's been virtual. Okay, so that's a finance committee. So finance committee last year was myself, Mr. Bellingham, and Ms. Cavalier. Obviously, there is a spot vacant. Mr. Bellingham, would you like to stay on that committee?
I certainly would.
Okay,
Chair,
yes,
I would offer the Finance Committee.
okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to be on the finance committee.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Robichaud, being treasurer, would you like to be on the finance committee?
Yes, but I would like to defer to either Ms. Boudreau or Mr. Olson to serve on that.
Okay, and it doesn't have to be, but historically, the board chair has been on the finance committee as well, because as the board chair, you get reports on audit and things of that nature. So I also would like to continue to serve on that committee. With that said, we have 4 people that are interested, and I'm going to have Mr. Bellingham continue on that committee. I will have Ms. Boudreau as a great opportunity for you to serve on that committee.
I'm happy to withdraw.
Would you,
So needed.
would you defer to Mr. Olson to be on that?
be
You would?
happy to
Okay,
defer to
perfect.
Mr. Olson.
Mr. Olson will
Yes.
be on that? Okay, thank you. And then myself, thank you, appreciate it. Ms. Zavril, you have all that? Okay. We have 1 down, a few more to go. Policy committee. You know what, Ms. Zavril, this document obviously needs a little bit of updating, as policy, it still has kind of the person that chairs it next to it. We still have Mr. Sesker listed on there. We need to take him off of a couple of these, so just a little cleanup. So, policy committee. This
Mr.
past
Chair, there's other subcommittees, like the C.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. Thank
Okay.
you. Those
That's
all
all
fall,
under-
those all fall under finance. Thank you, Mr. Olson. I appreciate it. Okay, so under finance, there are several. Great point, and thank you. The next one is Schools for Equity in Education, otherwise known as SEE. In the past year, we've only had 1 member on it, and that was Mr. Robichaud. And once again, we can have up to 3 members if people would like. Mr. Robichaud, would you like to continue to serve on that committee?
I will continue, and I believe Jamie also serves on that, or Mr. Benty.
Can you mention a little bit more about what that committee
It's
is?
really the lobbying group on behalf of 30-some school districts in the state of Minnesota, of comparable size to Faribault, that deal with equity in education, equity meaning finances, and will work very diligently to make sure that the members of C school districts receive equity in financing and funding for schools.
Thank you, Mr. Robichaud. And how often and when does that committee typically meet?
Once a quarter.
Yeah, and the meetings they have a virtual component
Right.
or an in-person component as well. So,
And they will have regional meetings at least a couple of times a year.
yeah.
Okay. So you would like to continue?
Yes.
And even though Mr. Benty's interested, that has no impact on board members serving on it. So is anybody else interested in serving on that committee?
Mr. Chair, I think Jerry's doing a fine job, actually.
Wonderful.
Thank you, Mr. Olson.
Wonderful.
He's been around for so long.
Anybody else? Last call for anybody else serving on the C committee? Okay, thank you, Mr. Robichaud. That brings us,
Can I,
yes.
that committee is going to be worth a lot this year, the way it sounds. Would you agree? Because with the Democrats in control, with all the stuff that's coming through, so they could have good influence.
Mr. Olson, I like your optimism.
I'm hoping.
You and I together.
Yeah.
Okay, that brings us next to the insurance committee. This past year, myself and Mr. Bellingham have served on that. Once again, we can have up to 3 people. Mr. Bellingham, would you like to continue on that committee?
I believe we've been on it for 2 or 3 years, and it's a steep learning curve, but I'm finding out, so I'm just kind of getting the hang of it. So yes, I really would. It's going to be.
Okay, and I would like to continue as well. It's interesting, we have 2 kind of insurance plans here in this district. One is self-funded and one is through PEEP. And so it's interesting, and I agree there's a learning curve. But we can have another person if interested as well. Would anybody else be interested in serving on the
Mr.
insurance
Chair,
committee?
maybe
Yes.
you'd explain, that was your idea for self-insurance. Maybe you can explain that?
Sure. Yeah, so for the people that don't know what self-insurance is, it's an interesting concept where you essentially fund your own pool for reserves. And our insurance broker, George Vanderwheat from One Digital, or it used to be called One Digital, I don't know if it's still that or not, he's been a really, really great asset for our district. And the majority of his districts have self-funded, and it just gives you a lot more control. We met with several districts in the metro area. We used to be involved in a kind of a southern Minnesota cooperative, and that was risk sharing. And so far, I think so good with regards to the self-funded model. The group that is not involved in the self-funded model is the teachers bargaining group at this time. They're on the PEEP, which is essentially a state organization, if you will. And so that's our insurance committee. We also look at that those both are regarding health insurance, but obviously we also have could be cyber insurance, it could be workman's comp, bless you, all that type of stuff as well. So with that said, did I do an okay job explaining that for you?
Oh, yeah, I mean, you started it.
I don't know that I started it.
It was your idea. It took a long time.
It did. It seemed like other districts were having great success, and so it seemed like it made sense for us to investigate
So
it
you're
as
totally
well.
responsible for it, right?
I wouldn't say that, but anyway, thank you. Is there anybody else who would like to participate and serve on that insurance committee? Okay, hearing no one, Ms. Averill, both myself and Mr. Bellingham will continue to serve on that committee. The next committee under finance is negotiations. We've historically had 3 people on that. Historically, it's been the board chair and the vice chair, and then one other, or up to one other. Once again, we can only have 3, not 4. Mr. Bellingham, as vice chair, would you like to continue on that committee?
I certainly would, since I have been involved in training. I was trained by Education Minnesota, and as a negotiator for the Teachers Union for, I think, 12 years, and then also trained by MSBA, and have been a negotiator, so I have experience with that. So yes, I certainly would.
Okay, thank you.
Chairman, I would offer to serve on that committee as well.
Wonderful. Thank you, Ms. Boudreau. Is there anybody else that would like to serve on that committee?
Are you going to serve on that?
I would like to as board chair. I think it's a good idea for the board chair to be involved in that, like we've done historically. Would you like to serve?
I would like it, but again,
I would.
I'm happy to yield, Mr. Chair, I would yield to Richard.
no, I'll yield back.
Okay, good. Ms. Boudreau, welcome to the committee. Okay, Ms. Averill, yeah, so we will have Ms. Boudreau, Mr. Bellingham, and myself serve on the negotiations. Thank you for that. Okay, I believe that is all of the finance committees. Thank you for catching me there. The next one is the policies committee, policy oversight, and currently we have Mr. Bellingham, Ms. Steves, and Mr. Olson that serve on that. Mr. Bellingham, would you like to continue in that on that committee?
Yes, I would.
Okay. Ms. Steves, would you like to continue on that committee?
Would.
You would, okay. Mr. Olson, would you like to continue on that committee?
I would like to give that to Ms. Moore.
Okay,
Yes, I was going to say, I
Perfect.
would like to be on that committee, please.
okay, perfect. Is there anybody else that would like to serve on the policies committee? Okay. Ms. Zavril, hearing nobody else, we will have Mr. Bellingham, Ms. Steves, and Ms. Moore on that committee. Thank you. This brings us to the facilities committee. This past year, it was Mr. Robichaud, Mr. Olson, and myself that served on that committee. Mr. Robichaud, would you like to continue on that committee?
Yes.
Mr. Olson, would you like to continue on that committee?
Yes, I would. Is there a possibility of changing that to 7:30 in the morning virtual?
Instead of 4
4,
p.m.?
3, or 4, or whatever?
Usually 4.
Or in the
We
afternoon.
can certainly ask Kane of that. Yep, we can certainly ask. Is there anybody else that would like to serve on the facility committee?
What days of the week?
Typically
Thursday.
Thursday.
Thursdays at 4?
It has been at 4. Mr. Olson is requesting that it move to 7:30.
Okay.
4:30.
If it's not able to get changed, I mean, I would like him to stay, but I would be interested if, you know,
Can you do 7:30 or?
no, I can do 4, though.
So
I believe currently the meetings are Thursdays, 3:30 to 4:30.
3:30 to 4:30. Okay.
Like the first, like every Thursday?
No,
No.
no, heavens.
Once a month.
Maybe.
Once a month.
The 3rd or
Yeah.
the 1st?
Maybe.
Let me look at my calendar here.
Yes. No, you don't. We just have it Thursdays monthly, not exactly which Thursday.
It floats.
Yeah,
Sort of.
we typically have it. It's virtual, yes. Yep. Otherwise, I'll still serve on it if you can't make 7:30 work. And we don't have to finalize this tonight. We can make a recommendation and we can see if it works for Kane and Carrie to move that to a 7:30 morning meeting or not.
Do you want to do that? If they're able to switch it, then
I
you
would
can
like,
still serve?
because that really kills into my schedule at 3:30.
Okay.
So 7:30 would be better.
Does that work?
Can you make 7:30 work? I can make 7:30
I
work.
can't make 7.
You can, okay, so I will stay on it if we can move it to 7:30. If not, if it stays at 4, you two will switch.
Does that work for you? Or-
If you can't make Thursdays at 3:30 work,
I really, like I said, it really kills into my day.
Yeah.
Getting back here. Stuff it's, but why don't we try it? In fact, it's
Okay.
up to the board. Don't we set the times, not the staff?
well, we need to make sure the staff is there at that
Right.
time.
I
right?
would assume that they would be.
You and I aren't going to give the presentation. So. But we'll see. We'll see if we can do that 7:30. If not, we'll be in touch with you. Fair enough? Otherwise, it'll be Mr. Robichaud, Mr. Olson, and myself still on that.
Mr. Chair, I just want to ask Mr. Olson to clarify, you're 7:30 a.m.?
In the morning.
8 a.m.
A.m. in the morning?
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh. Well, I'm retired, Richard.
Who said that?
That's just like our finance committee meeting.
I mean,
And we get good attendance. We'll see. So for right now, we'll put Mr. Robichaud, myself, and Mr. Olson. And will you put a request into Kane? Okay, thank you. Okay, that's facilities. The next one are the cooperative agreements. These are agreements that Faribault Public Schools has with, it could be the city of Faribault, it could be associations, it could be all the above, if you will. So the first one is the Alexander Park Cooperative Agreement. This past year was Mr. Olson and Ms. Steves. And how often did you meet?
I don't think we met.
I don't think, if you could, maybe just have one board member,
We can, that's why we can. Yep.
I mean, I don't need to be.
And oftentimes these cooperatives meet once a year, maybe twice, but not much more than that. So, okay, Mr. Olson, you do not need to be on there?
No.
Ms.
Give it to
Steves?
anybody that wants it.
Would you like to stay on there?
Does anybody else want to?
Does anybody else want to be on there? The cooperative agreement with Alexander Park, which would be with the city, I believe.
I'm not saying that just limit one, you can go up to 3.
Yep.
So it's not up to me to, but
Not a high-stress one.
Is there anyone on it that wants to be on it currently?
Ms. Steves, would you like to stay on it or no?
I can get on.
Or you can stay on so that we for sure have somebody?
I'm willing to offer
Ms. Boudreau?
serve
Okay,
on the Alexander Park unless you want it.
It's all yours.
Okay.
thank you. Anybody else interested?
Mr. Chair, just a clarification, it also includes the county.
The county's on that one as well. Okay, wonderful, thank you. I've never been on that committee, so I don't know.
Sat in for.
Thank you.
So we did have one meeting, yeah.
Ms. Zavril, you'll put Ms. Boudreau on there. Thank you so much. Okay, the next one is the ice arena. That apparently was Miss Cavalier, or it was Miss Cavalier? Okay, so it's totally vacant right now. I'm guessing that's cooperative with the city and for sure the Hockey Association. Would somebody like to serve on that committee? We can have between 1 and 3 people. Quarterly, you think? Okay, would somebody like to serve on that? Typically 4 times per year. Yes, thank you.
Mr. Chair, I would.
Wonderful, thank you. Anybody else interested? All right, thank you, Ms. Moore. The next cooperative agreement is the soccer committee, and that's with the Soccer Association in the city of Faribault. This past year, it was me that served on that. Is there anybody really itching to get on that committee?
Now, you have good ties to the soccer committee, right, through your organization?
Yeah, I mean, sure. I mean, not great by any means, right? I mean, the Booster Club doesn't fund anything really out there other than some graphics and stuff, but I'm certainly willing to do it unless somebody else really wants to. Okay, Ms. Averill, I'll do it. Thank you. The next is the State High School League. Mr. Bellingham, you've served on this in the past. Would you like to continue?
Yes, I would.
Can you tell a little bit more about it, as we can have more than one person if interested?
Well, basically, when you get informed by the activities director as to when the high school league is meeting, what bylaws, once in a while, once a year, I believe you vote on certain items pertaining to high school league activities and rules, et cetera. So that's about it. It's fairly minimal. You get a notice from the high school league on changes in activities and extracurriculars, et cetera there, so.
Okay, thank you. Anybody want to join Mr. Bellingham on that? Okay, not see anybody. Mr. Bellingham, congratulations.
Oh, thank you.
Next one is the Cannon Valley Special Education Cooperative, in the past year, it was Mr. Robichaud, and then we designate an alternate. And Mr. Robichaud, would you like to continue on this?
Yes, I would.
And can you tell a little bit more about it for the alternate?
Sure, it's a joint powers agreement with 4 districts, Owatonna, Northfield, Medford, and Faribault, dealing with special needs students that need a special placement. They meet once a month. I believe it's the 3rd Tuesday, 4:45 to probably 5:30 is latest I've ever stayed, so it's a very short meeting. But it is serving those 4 districts with multiply handicapped students. It is located out at the old penny store at the mall. Has been remodeled extensively to accommodate this program. Been in existence, I believe, 3 years. So.
Yeah, I think 2 years.
maybe 2 years.
Out there, right? But we've had partnerships with Northfield
Yes.
for a while as well. Yeah,
But it was scattered and,
it was
but
correct.
this is a much bigger
Yep.
facility,
And all in one area.
all in one. So they really took over J.C. Penney's and another store. I mean, it's quite extensive. Pretty good.
So, Mr. Robichaud, you're willing to serve as the primary.
Yes.
Is there somebody willing to serve as the alternate? Once again,
Mr. Chair, I would like to, if there's a nomination of Miss Moore based on her education.
Yes, I will, thank you.
you will? Okay, wonderful. Thank you. Anybody else interested? Okay. Mr. Robichaud will be the primary. Ms. Moore, you will be the alternate. Thank you. Okay, the next committee is wellness. Once again, Ms. Averill, I think we got to update this on kind of the chair of this committee. in the wellness this past year was Mr. Robichaud and Ms. Steves. Would you both like to continue on this committee?
I think we hardly ever met.
We did not meet.
Mr. Chair, I would like to be on that committee.
You'd like to be on the
I
committee?
will certainly.
Ms. Zavrel, is Mr. Pruitt leading this committee, or who's leading this committee? Janet is. Janet is.
I believe.
The wellness. Okay, wonderful. Okay, so Ms. Moore is interested, and I'm sorry, Mr. Robichaud, Ms. Steves, you want to continue on it or no?
Continue.
Unless anyone else wants it. And just to clarify, wellness means employee-based wellness.
Right, yep.
Correct. Okay, so I am hearing Ms. Moore and Ms. Steves will serve on that committee, to be determined when it's put together and what it looks like. So, okay, thank you. The next committee is District Advisory Committee. That's chaired by Ms. Tracy Corcoran. This past year, Mr. Robichaud and Ms. Steves were on it. Would you like to continue? Mr. Robichaud, yes? Ms. Steves?
Yes.
Yes. Can you tell us a little bit more about this committee and when you would meet?
It meets, I believe, quarterly, if not once a month. The first part of the month deals with a number of issues in the school district regarding any kind of new curricular areas that are coming up or discussion, how that impacts the school district, and the instructional strategies. It basically is a very comprehensive committee as it relates to the school district.
Mr. Chair, I would offer to serve on that committee.
Thank you, Ms. Boudreau. So this is, this sheet shows the meetings are the first Thursday of each month. Start at 3:30, it looks like. No meetings in June, July, and August.
And
is
it's virtual. It
what
has
I've
been
got.
virtual the last.
Okay,
I would like to continue.
You'd like to
So this
continue.
is one of the two committees that I serve on as a community member with my 9 to 5 job.
so you are,
So I think this is a kind of tricky one, especially with the chamber's work with Cradle to Career.
Yeah.
So
I think we're still best to not have more than 3 board members, even if you're serving as a chamber representative. I'm not sure how we totally bifurcate that. You know what I mean?
Can you get around that, or if she represents the chamber and then not a board member, like a signed statement?
Yeah, that I don't know, but let's find out. Is there anybody else that would like to serve on that committee as well?
Mr. Chair, I just want to point out, so if you have 4 board members in a meeting,
It's a
it constitutes a quorum.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
And
you
that's my
could,
issue.
so you could not have,
Even if she's coming from
even if she's coming from
I agree
there.
with
So
that.
I would recommend we just stay with the 3.
3.
That would make most sense.
So we have Ms. Boudreau, Mr. Robichaud, and Ms. Steves that are willing to serve on that committee. Anybody else? Okay. They get it. Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you to the 3 of you. The next committee is Community Education Advisory Council. Mr. Pruitt, you lead this one? Okay, thank you. This past year, it appears we had 2 people on that, Mr. Bellingham and Ms. Steves. I don't believe we had 3. We can certainly add a 3rd, but Mr. Bellingham and Ms. Steves, would you like to continue on this?
I would.
Mr. Chair, I would like to be on that one.
Okay? Mr.
Yes.
Bellingham? Okay, so I think we'll just bump it to 3 instead of 2. That makes life really easy. Thank you to all 3 of you. Mr. Pruitt, is your plan to meet 4 times a year, quarterly? Is that correct? Okay, thank you. Do you have a days of the week set or time set? In person here? Okay. Okay, thank you. Appreciate it. All right, the next one is the Superintendent Evaluation Committee. This past year, it was myself, Mr. Robichaud, and Ms. Cavalier. Typically, the board chair does serve on this, and I would be interested in continuing. Mr. Robichaud, would you like to continue? And would anybody else be interested in serving on the evaluation committee?
I would offer to serve on that committee.
Wonderful, thank you. Anybody else? Okay, it's the three of us, thank you. I'll be in touch with you on that, Ms. Boudreau. That doesn't have a set time. We typically ramp up in summer-ish to try to make sure that we get superintendent goals early summer so that the superintendent can make sure they get them all, the goals shared with all of their team for, before school starts, and then we'll do a mid-year review in January. All of us will, so thank you. Okay, the next item is the Falcon Enrichment Education Program, otherwise known as FEEP. And I don't know who was on it last year, but it was either Ms. Cavalier or Ms. Lechtenberg, it appears. Ms. Lechtenberg, okay. So that is open. Ms. Boudreau, you'd be interested?
I would be interested.
Wonderful, thank you. Anybody else?
Mr. Chair, Mayor, and just for information, you're a non-voting member, you're ex officio. So you're just a board member at the meeting there. So you're not a voting member of that particular group, just a board rep.
But we'd still love you to go. Okay, anybody else interested? Ms. Zavrel, do you want to briefly explain, or Mr. Bellingham, what FEEP is, what exactly that group does? You may or may not know, I just want to make sure everybody knows.
Well,
Go ahead.
Dr. Robichaud is actually the best one to explain
Okay.
what it is.
Yes.
Because it's an offshoot of FAPSITA.
Yes.
So,
It is a offshoot of FAPSETA, which is our scholarship committee. And basically, about 3 years ago, we established FEEP, Faribault Enrichment Education Program, which basically offers grants to classroom teachers for some unique kinds of activity that they wish to be engaged in. And I can't speak to when they meet, but they do take applications at the beginning of the school year,
They're
3 times a
three
year.
times a year.
3 times a year. And some of the grants that have been awarded, technology, other kinds of areas, so really enhances and enriches what's going on in the classrooms.
And I believe they meet Tuesdays at 7 or 7.
It's a 7 a.m.
It's-
meeting
yeah.
in person here.
Yeah.
Tuesday, 7 a.m.,
Right.
when they
Three
meet?
times a year.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Ms. Boudreau, that works for you? Okay, thank you. Okay, the next committee is the Mental Health Committee. That's led by Janet Lewis-Muth. Myself, Ms. Steves, and Mr. Olson were on that this past year. We've moved that to in-person, I believe, quarterly. And Ms. Steves, would you like to continue on that?
Unfortunately, I can no longer make the time work.
Okay. Mr. Olson, would you like to continue on that?
What time is that again?
7:30, and I don't have the exact dates, but it's usually here in person. And that's just so everybody knows, that's a committee that has a few board members on it, that has a few staff members on it, and it has a whole host of community partners that come and show up. And so it's a very good committee. You can't make it. Mr. Olson, would you like to
I would
continue?
like to be on that, and I would like to nominate Miss Moore.
Okay, I saw
Raising my hand.
I saw her hand go up over here, so, okay. Ms. Moore, you'd like to serve on that?
I'd like to offer to be. on
Wonderful, thank you.
And this committee relates to mental health of students.
Yeah, primarily. Yeah, and once again, we'll have partners from the city and the county and Alina and Mayo Clinic and things of that nature. So if I'm hearing that right, it's going to be Ms. Moore, Mr. Olson, and myself. Is that right? Okay, thank you. The next committee, and I believe this is the last committee, is the Equity Committee. This past year, it was Mr. Robichaud and either Ms. Cavalier or Ms. Lechtenberg.
I think it was selected.
Ms. Lechtenberg, okay. Mr. Robichaud, would you like to continue on this?
Yes.
Okay. Can you tell us a little bit more about the committee?
Basically, they meet, I don't know if they meet monthly.
Looks like I have on here monthly September through May.
Okay, they might have missed some months because of other factors. Really just takes a look at the whole issue of equity and how the district is addressing that, not only as a district, but individual buildings. They have equity teams that take a look at equity and bring back some activities of what they're doing and how they're addressing equity in their particular buildings.
Okay, thank you. You'd like to continue, sir?
Yes.
Okay,
Mr. Chair, I would love to be on that committee.
wonderful. Thank you, Ms. Boudreau. Anybody else? We can have up to 3. We have 2.
I would like to nominate Ms. Moore.
Ms. Moore, would you like to be on that committee?
Yes, I could be on that committee.
When
Okay.
do they meet?
3:30.
3:30.
Is that typically in person
Yeah,
or
it's-
virtual?
it's in this room.
Here, okay. I'm sorry if you said what day of the week?
We just met and I can't remember what day it
Yeah.
was.
No, I just have monthly.
It was just before our last board meeting.
Yeah,
so
Catherine
it was
Schultz is the one that oversees it.
Probably Monday.
Okay.
Oh, what did we say again? Mondays?
Mondays? Okay.
Oh, no, I don't.
Okay. So I am hearing Mr. Robichaud, Ms. Boudreau, and Ms. Moore are willing to serve on that committee.
May I ask, Mr. Chair, is 3:30, is it every Monday or what? I didn't hear that, I'm sorry.
Once a month, I believe.
Once a month?
I'm not sure it's Mondays. I gotta find it on my,
They'll get you the information.
Okay.
Once again, if something comes up and you can't make it or you got to reschedule, and if you ever can't make it, we can move people off of committees and add people throughout the course of the year. So, but for right now, it's going to be Mr. Robichaud, Ms. Boudreau, and Ms. Moore. So thank you.
It is Monday.
Okay, so that concludes our committee assignments.
Could you repeat all the committees?
You know, Mr. Olson, I wore these socks for you tonight, and I think they say selective hearing specialist. So I didn't hear your question.
Okay, that's fine.
But thank you, I appreciate it.
I'll send it out.
Okay, so we do need a motion to actually approve all the committees that we just made assignments for. So I would entertain a motion to approve the committee assignments.
So moved.
Second. I'll give it to Ms. Boudreau.
Okay, we have a motion by Ms. Moore, second by Ms. Boudreau. Any further discussion?
Mr. Chair, if I may, I'd like to thank all the board members for volunteering your time on the few committees that we have like that, and I hope, in sincerity, I hope that board members take these committee assignments seriously and attend them and participate and come prepared for them.
Yeah, if you can't attend them, feel free to make sure you let somebody know, and once again, there may be other people interested. I will tell you that, and I'm speaking to Ms. Moore and Ms. Boudreau just as the newest board members, the committees are a great, great spot to learn a lot and ask questions and have follow-up and all that stuff. So thank you, once again, as Mr. Bellingham said, thank you to everybody for their willingness to serve on not one committee, but several. So thank you. Okay. That was item 9. That brings us to item 10. I'm sorry? Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. We have a motion by Ms. Moore, a second by Ms. Boudreau. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Thank you. Now that brings us to item 10, school assignments. I will just preface this with our school assignments. There's ironically 7 school buildings. There's 7 board members. When you get assigned a school, it doesn't mean that we get to go and run the school. That's the principal's job, right? But what it does do is an opportunity for you to have conversations with that principal, have an opportunity to go in and see staff, walk the building with the principal or staff, possibly partake in a staff meeting, possibly serve lunch or whatever you want to do. I would just ask that if you do go in buildings, and I think this is what the proper protocol that we've always followed, is if you are going to go to a building, just make sure you line it up with the principal, and don't just show up 3 days out of the week unannounced and start walking around. Oh, and we do get badges?
They should have their badges on when they go. We'll get badges.
Okay, perfect. So, but that's all, really, it's just, we kind of act as a liaison between those buildings and the board, and just a great opportunity for them to share stuff with us if they want, and things of that nature. So I can tell you, I was with Jefferson last year, and I was in the building, 3 times, 4 times, something like that. So not a lot, but you're welcome to do as much as you want and go from there. So last year, I'll just read these out loud, and then we can assign. Last year, I had Jefferson, either Miss Cavalier or Miss Lechtenberg had Lincoln. Miss Steves had Roosevelt. Mr. Bellingham had the middle school. Mr. Olson had the high school. Once again, either Miss Cavalier or Miss Lechtenberg had the Area Learning Center, and Mr. Robichaud had McKinley Early Childhood Center and ABE. So that's what we had last year. Yes, Ms. Boudreau. I'm sorry, Ms. Moore.
Mr. Chair, I'd be willing to offer to take Area Learning Center.
Okay,
That's the vacant one.
And Mr. Chair, I would love to take Lincoln.
okay, you take Lincoln.
Mr. Chair, I'll stick with high school.
Okay. Ms. Steves, you want to stick with Roosevelt?
Yeah.
Okay. Mr. Bellingham, do you want to stick with the middle school?
Middle school is me.
Okay. Mr. Robichaud, do you want to stick with McKinley Early Childhood?
Choice, yes.
If you want to switch to Jefferson, I'll switch with you, or I'll stick
You
with
can take
Jefferson.
Roosevelt as well. I'm open.
I'm sorry?
You can take Roosevelt too.
No, that's fine. No, I'll stay with.
Okay. I would just ask if anybody feels for any reason they have a potential conflict of interest with the school they've chosen. I don't know what that may or may not be, but just be cognizant if there is a conflict of interest, just that we know that. So, all right. Otherwise, Ms. Averill, what I heard was I've got Jefferson, Ms. Boudreau has Lincoln, Ms. Steves is staying with Roosevelt, Mr. Bellingham staying with the middle school, Mr. Olson staying at the high school, Ms. Moore is taking the Area Learning Center, and Mr. Robichaud staying with McKinley and ABE. Okay? Okay. So, with that said, we do need, I will entertain a motion to approve those school assignments.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Olson, a second by Ms. Moore. Any further discussion on this item? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Thank you. That brings us to item number 11, school board salaries. So what this states here is school board salaries are set at $275 per month for directors and $300 per month for the board chairperson. I believe this is consistent with what we've had for the last several years at a minimum. I will entertain a motion to approve these amounts.
Mr. Chair, I'll so move.
We have a motion by Mr. Bellingham. Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion by Mr. Bellingham, a second by Ms. Moore. Any further discussion?
I would like to offer an amendment that we do raise the salaries.
Okay, Mr. Olson, what would your amendment be? What dollar amount?
I don't know, $50 per month.
Okay, so I'm just writing this down. So, Mr. Olson, would you like to move everybody up $50 so board members would go from $275 to $325, and the board chair would go from $300 to $350?
Sure.
That's your recommendation?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. So, Mr. Olson has now made an amendment to raise these amounts by $50 per month. Do we have a second? Mr. Bellingham's going to keep me on my toes here with Robert's rules with amendments. Do we have a second for that amendment?
A second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for the amendment to raise all of these amounts by $50 per month. Further discussion on this?
Mr. Chair, I think with the realization that we have to, in the future, probably make some cuts, and also because of the declining achievement in the last few years, I don't think at this time a raise is appropriate, so I would vote no.
Okay, thank you for that, Ms. Moore. Any other discussion? Mr.
Chair,
Olson, yes.
I'm putting a lot of my poker chips on what's happening at the state, especially with the, with the unfunded mandates. And that includes cross subsidies. There's a resolution approved by the delegates that fully fund all mandates, that if you can't, get rid of them. They even took that above even $5 per student, the general formula. So, I mean, that came from all board members on both sides of the aisle. So if they could achieve that, that would, bring us a lot of money.
Yep. Okay.
That's, so.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Any other comments for discussion here? Ms. Moore, I will be voting no against it, and I agree with you. Mr. Olson, once again, I love your optimism, but we're going to have to cut upwards of $1 million or $1.5 million, and I just hate the message that we give ourselves a raise and we've got to cut staff, which will impact class size or programs or something like that. So I too will be voting no, but I just wanted to share that. So,
Mr. Chair, I have a question. I don't know if anyone knows how our salaries compare to the other salaries in the Big Nine or Big Ten. What is it?
Big Nine.
Big Nine.
Yeah.
Do you know how our salaries compare? $250.
I don't know, but we can ask Ms. Averill to do that. Yep.
Kind of important for the vote.
Yep.
I guess we don't know.
Yep. We don't. Okay, thank you. Okay, any further discussion? Hearing none, we will now vote on the amendment to raise the salaries by $50 per month. That was, the motion was made by Mr. Olson, and the motion was seconded by Ms. Boudreau. So all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Ms. Boudreau, you're saying aye or not aye? No? Okay. Opposed?
Nay.
Can you do a roll call? Because I don't know who said what there.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Now we're voting on the amendment,
Just
Mr.
the
Chair.
amendment.
I think it was.
But I got to know what it was. So what's our number? Were you a no? Okay, you were a no? You were a no? You were a yes. 6-1 is what it was? Okay, thank you. 6-1 defeat. Okay. Thank you. Now we go back to the original item, which is in front of us at $275 per month for directors, $300 per month for the board chair. That we have a motion by Mr. Bellingham, a second by Ms. Moore. Any further discussion on that? Yes, Mr. Robichaud.
Mr. Chair, I will be voting no on this, and as I have consistently over the last number of years, I believe that as elected officials, we are here to serve the community, not to receive a salary. I know that the time commitment is critical. I served on the board when I was full-time employee, and I also know what the commitment is. But I do believe that as we are servants of the community, that we should not be accepting any kind of salary, unlike some other boards in the community. I believe that it's our ethical obligation, our moral obligation, to serve the students in the best interest that we can, and not to accept a salary. That being said, if the vote is the affirmative that is accepted, I'd like for the board to consider sharing at least 1 month of their salary toward FAPSETA, the Faribault Area Education Trust Association, which goes to fund scholarships for students that are graduating from Faribault. We did this last year, and we formed a scholarship for students that are going into education. It's called Leadership, and it was sponsored by the Faribault School Board. and I believe that's probably one of the few in the state of Minnesota. So I will vote against this, but I also understand if it is voted in the affirmative, that I would appreciate it if the board would consider donating 1 month of their salary toward FAPSETA.
In your request, there is a consideration, nowhere in vote, correct? That would be up to
No, that
board
would be up
members
to the individuals.
on their own to donate if they want to, correct? Okay, thank you. Okay, so any further discussion on this item? Okay, hearing none, we have a motion by Mr. Bellingham, a second by Ms. Moore. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Okay, am I correct here? This was 5-2? Is that right? 2 noes? Everybody else, yes. Okay. Motion passes 5-2. Thank you. All right, this brings us to item number 12. Consider approval of Business Office Annual Resolutions 23-25 through 23-32 for fiscal year 2023. I will just read those to everybody. Historically, we have taken these all in one motion. And I will read these right now. So, Resolution 23-25 is designation of depositories. Resolution 23-26 is designation of official publication. Resolution 23-27 is authorization of use of fax signatures. Resolution 23-28 is payment of claims between board meetings. Resolution 23-29 is combining duties of the clerk and treasurer. Resolution 23-30 is petty cash resolution. Resolution 23-31 is investment resolution. And Resolution 23-32 is appointing responsible contract authority. With that said, I will entertain a motion to approve all of these at once. If anybody has specific questions about any specific resolution, we'll get to that during the discussion timeframe. Okay, Ms. Boudreau, thank you.
Second.
We have a motion by Ms. Boudreau, a second by Ms. Steves. Any further discussion on this list of resolutions in front of us? Okay, hearing none. Ms. Steves, this is a roll call, so will you please do a roll call?
John Bellingham.
Aye.
Linda Boudreau.
Aye.
Linda Moore.
Aye.
Richard Olson.
Aye.
Jerry Robichaud.
Aye.
Cassie Steves, aye. Chad Wolf.
Aye.
Passes 7-0.
Thank you for that. This brings us to item 13, consider approval of Resolution 23-33, appointing local education agency, otherwise known as LEA, representative. I will entertain a motion to approve.
Mr. Chair, I'll so move.
Thank you, Mr. Bellingham. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Olson. Mr. Benty, would you like to tell us a little bit more about this? This shows that consider approval of Tracy Corcoran, Director of Teaching and Learning, as the superintendent's designee. Can you tell us a little bit more about this?
Yeah, this just allows Ms. Corcoran to go in and make decisions based on curriculum and other pieces for her job for the Department of Education.
Okay, thank you.
It's a yearly approval.
Yep, thank you. Any further discussion on this item? Okay. Hearing none, we have a motion by Mr. Bellingham, a second by Mr. Olson, and this too is a roll call.
John Bellingham.
Aye.
Linda Boudreau.
Aye.
Linda Moore.
Aye.
Richard Olson.
Aye.
Jerry Robichaud.
Aye.
Cassie Steves, aye. Chad Wolf.
Aye.
Passes 7-0.
Thank you. That brings us to item 14, consider approval of Resolution 23-34, designating Jamie Benty as identified official authority for Minnesota Department of Education secure websites. I will entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Olson, a second by Ms. Steves. Mr. Benty, would you please educate us a little more on this?
Yeah, once again, just a yearly approval to allow me basically giving me the authority to work with the Department of Education through their website and approve budgets and other grant opportunities.
Any other questions or discussion on this item? All right, hearing none, Ms. Steves, will you please do a roll call?
John Bellingham.
Aye.
Linda Boudreau.
Aye.
Linda Moore.
Aye.
Richard Olson.
Aye.
Jerry Robichaud.
Aye.
Cassie Steves. Aye. Chad Wolf.
Aye.
Passes 7-0.
Okay, thank you. Brings us to item 15, consider approval of Resolution 23-35, designating Catherine Zavrell as identified official authority for Minnesota Department of Education secure websites to add and remove names only for Faribault Public Schools. I will entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Ms. Steves, a second by Ms. Boudreau. Mr. Benty, would you just touch on this, please?
Yeah, once again, a yearly vote simply to give her the right to go in and add and remove names on the systems that we use.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion on this? Okay, hearing none. Ms. Steves, will you please do a roll call?
John Bellingham.
Aye.
Linda Boudreau.
Aye.
Linda Moore.
Aye.
Richard Olson.
Aye.
Jerry Robichaud.
Aye.
Cassie Steves. Aye. Chad Wolf.
Aye.
Passes 7-0.
Okay, thank you. That brings us to item 16, consider approval of giving board chair authority to contact school district attorney of record for consultation and information. I will entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Thank you. We have a motion by Mr. Robichaud and a second by Ms. Boudreau, and I think the title of this is pretty self-explanatory, I guess, so. This is not a resolution, so any further discussion on this? Mr. Olson?
Yeah, I like to, I know it probably won't pass, but I think any board member should, within reason, have the opportunity to contact the school district attorney, not call him 3 times a day, him or her, but I think it just puts too much power into the board chair's hands.
Okay, thank you. Other thoughts, Mr. Robichaud?
Sure. Can I respond to Mr. Olson's
Absolutely.
comment? I certainly understand what you're saying. However, when you have attorneys that are charging
Yeah.
$300, $400 an hour, to have that kind of an open dialogue, and as Ms. Moore mentioned a few moments ago, we're going through some budget cuts. I'd hate to see our attorney bill come in thousands of dollars. So.
Well, that's why I said within reason.
Yeah, but what's within reason? That's
Well,
subject to
that's-
interpretations. I appreciate what you're saying, but
I think it gives too much power to the board chair, especially if you got a question, and I'm not, or any board chair would say, no, I'm not gonna call. You know, it's just like, especially if it's a legal question. You know, it just, but
Anybody else? Any
that's my
further?
opinion.
Thank you, Mr. Olson. Thank you, Mr. Robichaud. Anybody else? Thoughts, comments, questions? I can tell you, Mr. Olson, knock on wood, I hope I don't jinx it. I think this might be my 4th year as chair. I've never talked to our attorney yet. Knock on wood. Like I said, I hope I don't jinx it, but anyway, that probably will jinx it. So, we have a motion by Mr. Robichaud, a second by Ms. Boudreau. Any further discussion? Okay. Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Motion passes 6-1. Thank you. All right, that brings us to item 17. Consider approval of Resolution 23-36, directing the administration to make recommendations for reductions in programs and positions and reasons therefore for fiscal year 2023-2024. I will entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Olson, a second by Ms. Steves. Mr. Benty, would you just touch on this, please, what this is?
Yeah, so simply this is, as we move into budget reduction season, this just gives me the authority from the board to start putting together reduction plans to the budget to present to you to be discussed and voted on.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion on this? Once again, this is a formality if we're looking at reductions. Okay, Ms. Steves, hearing no further discussion, this is a roll call. Will you please do a roll call?
John Bellingham.
Aye.
Linda Rizzo.
Aye.
Linda Moore.
Aye.
Richard Olson.
Aye.
Jerry Robichaud.
Aye.
Nancy Steves. Aye. Chad Wall.
Aye.
7-0.
Thank you. Okay, this brings us to item,
Mr. Chair,
yes, sir.
I'm going to excuse myself for the rest of the meeting.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Appreciate your attendance. This brings us to item 18, levy discussion. I believe Mr. Gerdes is online, and he's going to walk us through just some discussion. There's no action item here. And I believe we have that up and back for anybody in the audience that would like to follow along if you don't have this printout. I will tell you, if you have the printout, it's really hard to read. It's like the ink is goofy or the font is goofy. So it might be easier to follow along online. So, Mr. Gerdes, welcome. Can you hear us okay?
I can hear you, Chad.
Okay, the floor is yours, sir.
Oh, yes.
Can you guys hear me the way I'm speaking?
Yes, I think we're pretty good. Yep, thank you.
All right. Is everybody ready to go?
I think so.
So, just to talk a little bit about forecasting and projecting into the future, Chris and I have been working with our analytical software, and we have kind of a document that I'm going to go through with you this evening.
Scott, let me just interrupt you real quick. For whatever reason, your voice has gotten a little softer, and I don't know if we can turn the volume up on our end or if you need to somehow be closer to a mic. So just give us 1 second.
I'm sitting right in front of my computer, and I
Okay.
can certainly talk louder. God knows I can do that. It might be the reception here at my house. Our power has been blinking on and off most of the evening. Is that better, Chad?
Yeah, I think that's a little bit better. Yep, would you agree?
All
Yep.
right. I will try and use my teacher voice that I don't have.
Okay, thank you.
So, this document is just a summary, and it really gives us kind of a 5-year snapshot of what our funding looks like or will look like. There is a lot of assumptions that go into this modeling, but what we've modeled in this assumption is a 1.5% increase to the funding formula from the state every year for fiscal year 24 through 28, as well as an average of 3.5% increase year over year in special ed funding. So it's pretty conservative modeling, and not near as promising what Mr. Olson has alluded to over the last couple board meetings. But it's a place to start. So if you look at the document, and I'm specifically going to talk about the graphs along the right side of the document, you can see that the blue document, or the blue line, represents estimated revenue, and the green line is estimated expenses. And so the first set of columns is for the revised budget. Now, the revised budget will be presented to you at the next board meeting. But you can see that we're just a little bit expenses over revenue. And the actual number is somewhere around $170,000. Okay? If you look at the yellow line that's on the bottom, the yellow line represents our fund balance. Okay? And as the board knows, we have a 9.5% fund balance. That's kind of hard to see just from this graph. But you'll get the picture as we roll out into future years. If we look into fiscal year 2024, you can see that we're a little bit, again, expenses over revenue. And then moving forward, that gap widens. And I'm going to explain that to you here in just a little bit. So in fiscal year 24, again, we projected 1.5% increase. a little bit of money onto the special ed, but Richard, to your point, nothing to the cross subsidy. And we do have some extra compensatory dollars that are in this, as well as some one-time dollars that the board approved at the T&T meeting for our tax levy that we talked about. So you can see that 24, while we need to make a few cuts there, isn't so bad. As we move into fiscal year 25, you can kind of see revenue drops off. And we'll have a graph down a little farther. That's because we no longer have ESSER money in fiscal year 2025. And so the blue line kind of goes up and down a little bit. And again, that's based on student enrollment numbers.
Mr. Gertis, sorry to interrupt you. Can you just define what ESSER money means? What is that for everybody?
So the ESSER money, excuse me, the ESSER dollars, and we've had a series of them, are the federal dollars that have been allocated down from the government through the Department of Education to individual school districts, mostly due to COVID-19 and funding related to that. We've had ESSER 1 money, ESSER 2 money, ESSER 3 money, and the total of all of this is somewhere in the neighborhood of $13 million between all of them all put together.
Thank
Okay.
you. Thank you.
So as we move into 2025, you can see that our fund balance is just slightly above zero. In 26, we're well below zero. And by 2028, we're $22 million in the hole in terms of a fund balance. Okay? So I'm going to stop there. Are there any questions on that? Just looking at that first chart.
Board members, any questions?
Now, again, that assumes nothing in terms of budget reductions on this model. This is pretty much the state of the state, assuming that the board does absolutely nothing. If we slide down to the bottom of page 1, you'll just see a chart there, and you can pretty much see that's 3 years of historical data. And you can see that the green line and the blue line pretty much run right over the top of each other, because for the most part, we have had about a zero change in the fund balance for the last 3 years. Right? And that's reflected in the yellow line at the bottom. Okay? As we move down to page 2, the second page gives you a look at the revenue. So if you slide down to the 2 charts at the bottom of page 2, you can see the change in revenue year over year, both in terms of percent and in terms of dollars. So you can see in fiscal year 2023, our revenue went down. Again, that's coming off of a record high revenue year with a lot of federal dollars being spent. And then over in fiscal year 25, you can see that cliff where we lose the ESSER dollars. Okay? And again, if you slide down to the bottom, and this has to do with the expenses, kind of the same graph. Breaks down all the expenses by different types. So the blue is salary and benefits. The blue and the orange, excuse me. The green is purchase services. And then the red, gray, brown, pink, and gray, I guess, purple, gray, are all very just small buckets for other miscellaneous expense categories. And then again, if you slide down towards the bottom, you can kind of see the projected expenses, again, both historical and projected out to 2028. For those of you that want to do some late night reading, there are some explanations over to the left that will give you some written description of what those graphs are showing. And certainly, if you have any questions, you can ask me now or ask me as we have a chance to talk over the next few weeks. So, do I have any questions kind of on this document? Again, looking forward 5 years, we have some work to do as it relates to keeping that yellow bar on the north side of zero.
Board members, any, excuse me, any questions or comments for Mr. Gertis? Mr. Gertis, thank you. I'm not hearing any, but I just want to reiterate, if Mr. Olson is partly, halfway, or 100% right, these graphs will change, correct?
If Mr. Olson is accurate in what he says, this will be the last time we need to talk about this conversation.
Perfect. Well, thank you. We appreciate it. Any questions, board members? Mr. Gertis, we appreciate this info. It's good to have, and I think we're all hopeful.
And again, we'll talk more about this updated chart and the revised budget at the business meeting in the end of the month here.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, Mr. Olson.
Yeah, Scott's done a nice job, but again, hopefully I'm 100% correct that the Democrats will come through. 'Cause I think it's the delegates and also the Superintendent's Association said about the same thing as the school board members, but I think March 20th, I don't think they've sent details, but March 20th is school board day at the Capitol. So if the board, along with the superintendent, maybe even Scott, I just thought it'd be nice to have Scott, the financial expert, go with us, because we'd be talking money, basically. And like I said, it's up to one party, if they believe in education, to, like I said, get rid of the mandates if it's not fully funded. And this even came from Todd Sesker, like cross subsidies or whatever the mandates, we wouldn't have these discussions. We have all the money. But it's up to one party right now, if they're really serious about it. If not, I don't know what to say. So this would solve our problems in other districts, but my concern is for this district.
I think, Mr. Bente, do you want to talk a little bit about our conversation with
our local legislators?
Yeah, and Mr. Elstead?
Yeah, so we met with a couple of our local legislators right before winter break, along with the superintendent from Owatonna, Jeff Elstead, and discussed this. They are on board. They understand the financial need, especially when it comes to the cross subsidy piece for schools. The Minnesota Association of School Administrators, the superintendent's group, along with Schools for Equity and Education, the C group that we talked about earlier this evening, have very similar legislative agendas set out there. I think I forwarded on the MASA one to you, talking about close the cross subsidy for special education, which would basically eliminate our budgetary constraints. It would eliminate our need to even talk about reducing budgets. There's also, we're also dealing with about a $1.7 million per year EL cross subsidy. And I brought that up with our legislators as well. So for us, I know you're talking about going in March. For us, I would, and I've explained this to the legislators, I would like to have this done before then, if at all possible, because really it comes for us, it comes down to timing. You know, if they have something done by mid-February, then we can work off of that. Rather than, my biggest fear is if we don't know, do we cut and then turn around and rehire? Or do we roll the dice hoping that the legislator will come through and kick the can down the road a little bit? And, you know, the issue with that is we don't have the fund balance money to do that at the current 9.5% rate. So I think the district would, the board would have to look at, do you lower that for 1 year? But, you know, if we have to talk about reducing, we're going to lose some good people.
And you mentioned we met with representatives. We met with Senator Jasinski, Representative Petersburg. Representative Daniels was unable to make it that day, but that's who we met with. I think the theme that came away from Superintendent Benty and Superintendent Elstead was we really hope that whatever they do is sustainable and not just one time. The one time is, you know, just doesn't solve a lot of things. It's a temporary fix. So that was one of the big messages that the two of you had stressed. So,
Yeah, ongoing funding.
yeah.
And I just let me add that they, both of the legislators that we met with, and I know Representative Daniels as well, they are against unfunded mandates. That's one of the pieces they've talked about, is get rid of the unfunded mandates.
Thank you. Mr. Olson?
Yeah, just thought, when you talk long-term, not one-shot deal, is it possible, was it a $17 billion surplus or something? What's the, I don't know.
17.6 is the last number that we saw in the
Okay.
beginning of
Projected.
December.
It'd be nice to get the funding for, I'm throwing out like 5 years.
Well, one of the legislative agenda items coming from MASSA is 5% per year, and then for the next 2 years, and then based on inflationary factors from then on. That way, schools don't have to figure out, all right, where do we cut here, where do we add there? It's just based on inflation, so your expenses meet your revenues.
Are you still talking unfunded mandates too, or not?
No, this would be formula. This would be on the.
Okay, then I'll disagree that, let's get the unfunded mandates, rather than we always go for the formula. Well, let's do something with the unfunded mandates. Concentrate on that. I think that'll solve a lot of problems. But it's always talking about funding formula. What about the mandates? It's just,
That was the conversation.
Yeah, I mean, we had a conversation
Fully
around
funding the
all of
mandates.
these pieces.
yeah, it just, that,
Yeah.
is it possible for this board to get a list of the unfunded mandates that they've imposed upon us?
And the
that
dollar
possible
and the
or
dollar
not?
amounts. Mr. Gertis, is that something you can readily provide us with? What they are and the dollar amounts, like in the last fiscal year, excuse me?
We can certainly pull those numbers if you need them, Chad.
Yeah, I think that'd be good education.
Would you be looking for, because when you talk about unfunded mandates, are you talking about fully unfunded, or are you talking about partially unfunded, or all of the
It's-
above?
I know, but the delegates, either you fund it or you cut it.
Mhm.
I mean, it's not partial.
Because like
Oh.
EL, the two big ones are EL and special
Right,
education.
so-
Those are partially
And we
funded
should get
mandates.
small ones, large ones, because if you add up the small ones, guess what? That's a lot of money. It's either full or cut it.
Yeah, I think if it's readily available information, I think it'd be a good learning exercise for all of us.
Okay.
What that looks like. Is that all right, Mr. Gertis?
I couldn't hear exactly what was said there at the end, Chad,
Sorry, my apologies.
but I think if cabinet sits down and we talk about different things, to Mr. Olson's point, that are mandates that are unfunded, I think we could come up with a list. I mean, I got a half dozen in my head besides just EL and special ed that Mr. Benty mentioned a second ago.
Yeah, no, that'd be wonderful. I think it'd be a good educational opportunity for all of us. And then not only what they are, but the dollar amounts as well that would be unfunded.
Correct. Yep.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, any other questions, thoughts regarding this? Okay, hearing none. One thing I want to offer that MSBA had put out there was mentor, assigning an existing board member as a mentor if they would like it to new incoming board members. And I would just like to offer, if Ms. Boudreau or Ms. Moore would like a mentor, simply the easy access to call or whatever, if you want to bounce any questions off, whatever. Would you like that or not? What are your thoughts?
I love the opportunity to call one of my fellow members and get a question answered.
And you certainly can anyways, right? I mean, that's not just the MSBA piece that said, hey, it's nice if you do assign a mentor. We don't have to, but just know you can call anybody at any time if you want. Call, email, whatever. I'm certain that every board member is willing to have any conversation, so. Okay.
I'm willing to mentor.
Okay. Okay, wonderful. Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay, that brings us to item 19, adjournment.
I have
Oh.
the sheet that I passed out here, which was part of the levy
Oh, I'm sorry.
discussion.
I
That's okay.
apologize.
So one of, we're living in the worlds of ifs and buts right now. But part of my job is to bring to you every opportunity to increase revenue for the district. One of those is, this is a timeline I've given you for special elections for 2023 and when we would need to know by so that we could get pieces going. If the district was looking at a levy referendum, that would be a November election. Okay? If we're looking for a capital project levy, like what we went for here in the past November and it was unsuccessful, if we're looking for something like that, we can do that either in November or we could do that in May as well. I think we're getting too late now for any type of April election. But we can run elections in February, April, May, August, and November. If we're just looking for a levy, it has to be November. If we're looking for a capital project, it can be May or November, or August.
It can be on.
Yeah, or August. But I think we're past the ability at this point to really do anything for April. Yeah, we can't do February either, obviously.
Right.
Yeah, because we've missed the deadlines. As of right now, there are no other school districts in our county that will be going for a special election this year, which means if we decide to go, we will foot the entire bill for the election.
Northfield's not, huh?
Northfield is not, no. I spoke with their superintendent earlier today, and he said their board decided back in December to wait. So they will not be going in 2023 for anything, so.
When would we anticipate, worst case scenario, the legislature deciding on some reforms? Assuming they decide on something, right? Assuming
Yeah.
that,
Worst case scenario, June.
June.
Okay.
Worst case. Okay.
So, if you want my advice, I would say we now have the opportunity, since no one else is going to be going here this year, I would say the best option is for us to wait until November to go out, because that we'll know a lot more information by then, and we don't have to have the pieces in until August. But I think we should be discussing it along with the pieces that we're getting from the legislature as we go through this spring. But I just want to give you a timeline so that you know when we have to have pieces in place.
Thank you. Board members, any questions on this, if you will, calendar or sheet of information? No? Okay. Thank you. We appreciate it. All right. That brings us now to item 19, adjournment. I will entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Mr. Chair, I move we adjourn.
Thank you.
Second.
We have a motion by Ms. Boudreau, a second by Ms. Steves. Any discussion? Everybody wants to go home. All right, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes now 6-0. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for coming.